Hi, it's Christine at Cemetery of Choice. Today is August 20th, and I had posted separately about two abortion deaths that I had a little less information about. Today, we have got a serial killer's abortion entanglement. This case involved Dr. Thomas Neill Cream, who was sort of a contender for a possible Jack the Ripper until they looked and saw that he wasn't actually in London at the time, but that's him for you. So in this particular death, there's a lot of he said, she said, and it's really not possible to sort out what really happened, especially since the primary parties give us two very different stories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover what's known for sure, what various witnesses said, and then the two people, Mrs. Hattie Mack, aka Hattie McKee, and Dr. Cream, each of whom was blaming the other for the death of a young woman named Mary Ann. And Dr. Cream was an extremely vain, either very vain or very insecure, because while he was in jail during his trial, a reporter went to visit him. And Dr. Cream's like, I'm very respectable. Look, here's my diploma, and here's my medical license in Canada, and here's my medical license in the United States, and look at this award I got. I mean, this guy was a serious piece of work. So what we know for sure is that late in the evening of Saturday, August 21st, 1880, a woman named Elizabeth Green went to her local police station to say that there was a terrible smell coming from the apartment upstairs of her, which was where Hattie Mack lived. She said she'd knocked on the door and got no answer. So Lieutenant Steele went with Elizabeth to Mack's place and kicked the door in and found the decomposing remains of a young woman lying on a bed. And the odor sent the policeman out gasping for air. They opened the windows, got back in, searched the premises, found her belongings, and found her name, and that she was from Ottawa, which, considering Cream was Canadian, that might be why she'd sought him out. There was also a recipe of vile character found among Mary Ann's possessions, which was probably a recipe for an abortifacient, and two stilettos were also found in Hattie Mack's home. So the police questioned the neighbors, and they got a description of the doctor that the neighbors had seen coming and going, and somehow they were able to deduce from that that this was Dr. Cream. And they went down to White Brothers drugstore. Cream slept in a bedroom back behind the drugstore. And they went down there, they arrested him, they searched the premises, and they found a note from Hattie Mack reading, Dr. Cream, I'll not be home tonight. I've tried to see you. I got the key. I can't take the children home till she is moved. I not told anyone. Please let me see you as quick as you can. I under great strain. I am at my sister's. And was signed HM and included the postscript, the window is up, be careful of the woman upstairs. Now, Cream had been implicated in another abortion case, which according to the August 22nd, 1880 Chicago Tribune-Sun, he managed to elude by leaving town until the excitement had blown over. Now, this case aroused so much public interest that the police had to clear spectators away from the inquest. So we can look at what some of the witnesses said. And this is from the inquest, coverage of the inquest and coverage of the trial. So two young women, Mrs. Annie Beam and Mrs. Sarah Cook, said that they'd known Mary Ann for about 4 years. She'd lived in the same house with them for a while when working for a family named Gransfield, and she had moved out in the middle of May, going to live with the Fairman family in Woodlawn. At the time, she was keeping company with a young man named Tommy Burns. About 6 weeks prior to her death, Annie and Sarah said Mary Ann had moved out of the Fairman home, telling her employers that she was going to get married. And that was the last that these two friends heard of Mary Ann until her death. County physician Bluthard certified that an autopsy had shown that Mary had certainly been about 3 months into her pregnancy and had likely died from an abortion perpetrated with pointed instruments, and in his opinion, an unskilled person had wielded the instruments. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't a doctor. You should see some of the autopsies I have seen from supposedly safe legal abortions. There was a case in Florida. In this case, the woman didn't die, but the doctor managed to reach in with forceps through the back of the woman's uterus, poke a hole, and yank out her appendix without even disturbing the fetus. So mangled innards does not mean it was not a doctor. Now, two doctors, Fitch and Fraser, said that the care Cream had provided to Marianne after the abortion was appropriate given the injury she had. Now, we said Elizabeth Green is the one who had alerted the police to the smell upstairs. She lived with her husband and children downstairs of Hattie Mack and testified that Cream, not Green, let me fix that. Cream had visited the upstairs apartment 2 or 3 times a day for the previous week. Now, she had asked Cream who was sick, and he told her that one of Hattie Mack's children was ill. Elizabeth said that she'd heard groans coming from upstairs early Friday morning, ending at about 4 a.m. And curious about the goings-on, she looked out and saw Hattie Mack and her children leaving. And she also said that she had found it a bit fishy that a dainty-looking, pretty young white woman was staying at Hattie Mack's home, because this was a house inhabited entirely by black families. And that was really, really weird at that time. And oh my gosh, you read the newspaper articles, the racism would curl your hair. They keep referring to Hattie Mack as the Negress, and coverage of the court case includes questioning the jury about whether they would be able to give proper credence to the testimony of a black person or a full-blooded African. It's shocking when you see it. So at any rate, Dr. Cream came by often, sometimes with parcels, and Elizabeth really didn't think that this was kosher. Now, Ellen Hackley was an elderly woman who lived in the loft apartment above Hattie Mack, and she said that on Friday evening the odor was absolutely dreadful, and she identified Cream as the man she'd seen coming and going from Mack's place. And she also said that she heard groaning on early morning Friday the 20th before she'd left for work. A man named Thomas Brady testified that he knew Hattie Mack very well and had often boarded with her, and described her as one of the best women that ever lived, and said that once in a while he saw a sick woman while he was staying with her, but that Hattie had stopped letting him stay there because of his drunkenness. Dr. Donald Fraser, who had known Cream from when they were living in Montreal, said that he'd spoken to Cream on the phone and had given him advice the Wednesday before Marianne's death, and that Cream had told him the patient was improving. So on Thursday, at Cream's request, he had accompanied him to Mack's house, where he found Marianne in a lot of pain. He had treated her for inflammation, and Cream later called to tell him that Marianne was dead. So that's what we have from the disinterested parties. Now we're going to hear what Hattie Mack had to say. Now, Dr. Cream referred to Hattie Mack as a midwife. Now, she gave the police the impression that she was illiterate, unable to even sign her name, but it came out later that she was able to read and write. So Mack and her 3 children lived on the second floor of this 3-story dwelling. Actually, it was technically a 2-story dwelling with somebody living in the attic. And sometime around the end of February, Cream told her to expect a married woman whose husband had abandoned her. Mack was not told the woman's name. Cream said that he was going to treat the woman and asked Mack to care for her during the process and during the woman's convalescence. He said he would pay Mack $12.50 for providing care to the woman and would pay for the woman's room and board. And he would pay $5 for the first week and $4 for each subsequent week for room and board. and Hattie Mack owed Cream $15 for previous medical care for her and her family, so this was giving her an opportunity to pay off her debt. So Cream assured Mack that all would go well, that he'd done more than 500 cases at St. John's or St. Thomas's Hospital. So the young woman arrived on August 11th, and Cream performed some sort of operation on her. Mack said she'd seen the instruments, and she could describe these instruments clearly enough that doctors who were called as witnesses could identify them as instruments that would be appropriate for an abortion. But Mack said she did not go into the room with Cream and his patient. She just heard the young woman moaning. Now, during her stay, the woman told Mack that she'd been deserted by her husband and had gone out to work to earn her living. When she'd learned that she was pregnant, she'd sought out an abortionist and had been given the card of a Dr. Gear. Then Gear advised her to visit Dr. Cream, who was in that line of work. The young woman hadn't had the $5 to pay Gear for the consult, so she gave him her gold watch to hold as security until she could pay him. And she had followed Gear's advice and visited Cream, who said that he always had comfortable and safe places to keep his patients because he could pressure patients who owed him money to provide lodging. Now, this multi-day abortion where you're keeping the patient off the premises, that's how safe, legal, later abortions from about 18 to 20 weeks onward are performed. Some doctors actually have arrangements with nearby motels where the patients get a discount and they stay in the motel with their mom or their husband or their best friend or whoever they brought with them, rather than be in a hospital over the process of a multi-day abortion. So this wasn't something that was unique to criminal abortions. Now, Cream came by several times a day to check on his patient, which actually makes him a step above the safe and legal abortionists who make the women come to them to be checked on. And Marianne had expelled the baby, but was becoming very ill. So he told Mack to keep everything secret as death, not to call in another doctor to attend to the woman, and just keep administering the medicine he had provided. Now, Mack said that she had begged Cream to remove the woman from her premises so that she'd not be implicated, reminding him that she'd only gotten into this situation to begin with because she owed him money. But Cream refused, but did supply her with whiskey, which made her able to continue caring for the patient, whose deteriorating condition was causing a foul odor even before her death. Now, during Hattie Mack's testimony, Lieutenant Steele produced a pocketbook belonging to Marianne that had been found in Cream's office. Now, Mack was shown the jewelry that had been in the pocketbook, and she said that that had not been there when she'd given the pocketbook to Cream. But she said that the young woman told her she'd pawned some jewelry over to Cream to cover the $25 fee for his services. On the evening of August 19th, Cream brought in another doctor that was unfamiliar to Mack to try to save the ailing woman, which is consistent with, what was his name, Dr. Frazier? Dr. Frazier's testimony. And during her stay, Hattie said the patient often bewailed her fate. She moaned piteously the last day of her life, and at this point finally told Hattie Mack her name and the address of her mother in Ottawa. Marianne fell into unconsciousness some hours before she died around 6 in the morning on Friday, August 20th. Now, once the young woman was dead, Mack went to Cream to tell him what had happened. Now, he told her, she said, to take her children to her sister's home and leave the house locked up, and he had offered to buy all of her furniture for her for $30. She asked why, and he said that he was going to throw tar over everything and burn down the whole damn place. And Mack said she didn't want any part of this arson plan and threatened to contact the police. Then Cream told her to stay at the house in order to avoid causing suspicion, and that he would get a wagon, come by at 2 o'clock Saturday morning in his stocking feet to take away the body, and would shoot anyone who tried to interfere. And Mack told Cream there was no way anybody was going to be able to remain at the house due to the horrible smell, which was going to gain the attention of the neighbors, which it did. Now, Dr. Cream's version of events. This guy had graduated from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons in Edinburgh, Scotland, and was licensed to practice in Canada and in Illinois. Now, he said he first met Hattie Mack in April of 1880 when he treated one of her children. Now, I'm going to take Cream's words verbatim. A week ago last night, which would be Friday, August 12th, at 12 o'clock at night, the colored woman Mackie came to the drugstore where I was sleeping and was let in by the druggist. She asked for me and the druggist called me. I got up and the woman wanted me to go to her house where she said she had a very sick woman. I dressed and went with her. I found the young woman in bed. She had just been confined and I found a 3-month child lying on the bed. Knowing the character of the negress to be that of an abortionist, she having confessed to me before that she was such and had committed abortions upon herself and other women, I saw that something wrong had been done. They were both unwilling to speak on the subject at first, but I pressed them, and finally they admitted that the sick woman had been taking oil of cotton root and ergo. I told them that I knew of no medicine that could be relied upon for such a thing, and said that something else had been done. They denied this for some time, but afterward the negress told me that she had operated upon the woman with an instrument, which she produced. Then Cream testified in detail about the care he provided to Marianne. And he said that on Thursday, August 19th, he'd found Marianne desperately ill, which he attributed to concoctions that Mac had been administering on her own initiative. And Cream said that the records at the drugstore for the prescriptions he had ordered would show that he provided appropriate care to his patient. Cream insisted that he'd never performed an abortion in his life, but had assisted in necessary cases while a medical student. And this is something people tend to forget, that abortions were legal if it was deemed necessary to preserve the life of the woman. In some cases, some states there were specific laws saying that it was legal, and in some cases they would just decline to prosecute. Now, when Marianne died, Cream said, he told Mac, "You have killed the woman, and the best thing you can do is throw yourself on the mercy of the police." He denied having offered to buy Mac's possessions and torch the building, instead saying that he hadn't even been willing to complete a death certificate because he didn't think Marianne should be buried until the police cleared the case. Now, the outcome of all of this, the coroner's jury returned a verdict that Marianne came to her death by reason of peritonitis and metritis following on an abortion committed with her knowledge and the assistance of Dr. Thomas Neill Cream and Mrs. Hattie McKee. So both Cream and McKee, or McKay, or Mac, were held without bail pending a grand jury hearing. Now, the two had originally been slated to be tried together, but Cream got the cases severed. And on November 20th, 1880, Cream's jury was sent to deliberate at 3:30 p.m. and returned at 4:30 p.m. with a verdict of not guilty. The Inter-Ocean reported that Cream, who had been sitting in court in very apparent suspense and anxiety due to the absence of the jury, when the foreman announced the verdict, jumped to his feet and shook Counselor Trude violently by the hand, and then went through the same process with each member of the jury in rotation. Judge Gary informed Dr. Cream that it would be necessary for him to go through the jail and be discharged in the usual manner. Now, as for Hattie Mac, the charges against her were dismissed the day after Cream's trial ended, evidently because she had turned state's evidence against him. Now, whether Cream was guilty or not, it's really a shame that he was not found guilty and put in jail, because he later wound up getting a life sentence for providing poison that his married lover, used to murder her husband. And when a letter writing campaign and his promise to leave the country got him released from prison, he went to London and gained infamy as a serial murderer who killed young women with poison. And he was eventually hanged at Newgate Prison in 1892. So that's the story of Dr. Cream, serial murderer, and possibly criminal abortionist.